Okay, I think we are finally ready to go. Thank you all for being here. This is Kat. You guys know Kat and my partner Karen. We've done lots of projects together, so I'm happy to be back with you with Karen. This is a new project we're doing. These are a series of webinars, and what we're going to do is we're going to offer two versions. We're going to offer the introduction version for about 30 minutes, and then a few minutes for Q&A, so you can see what the content of this webinar is going to be all about. If it's something that applies to your business and that you want to learn more about. Now, the goal of these introductory 30-minute webinars is to give you actionable intel. Now, my husband was a military spy, so if you'll forgive me the little covert language there, we want to give you actionable information you can use in your business, even from the 30-minute introduction webinars. But more importantly, we want you to see if this is something that applies to your business now. And if it does, we're going to offer a 2-hour version of the same webinar a week later with much more in-depth stuff. So just want to let you know where we are, and you guys know who we are. That's me, and that's Miss Karen. You can find Karen now at solutionsforecommerce.com. Karen is our VA business consultant wonder kid. Right, Karen?
If you say so.
I like the wonder kid. That was pretty cool. All right. Yes?
Said yes, that was an interesting
that
choice.
was kind of a nice, yeah, of course she is. Charlene says yeah, I'm right. Okay, housekeeping. Yes, we're going to be recording this webinar, as you can tell by my playing with the Camtasia box earlier. It'll be available at thatcat.com/VA webinar. We'll also have 2 PDF handouts for you. One is going to be a list of tasks that you can hire out, outsourcing with a VA, a business consultant, some type of outsourcing. And the other is going to be an actual training document that Brad put together to train a VA to work in your Amazon inventory, how to balance your inventory, find what's missing, that kind of thing. If you're having trouble with sound, try calling in on the phone. I know that it might sound kind of lame, but it actually works. Sometimes the computer sound is just not there, so you can use the phone. The seminar is supposed to be 30 minutes. We'll do our best, and we will stay for about 15 minutes after Q&A. The key is to understanding everything that I bring you. I'm not teaching it this time. I've got Brad, my expert, to teach, but everything that I bring to you, it's important to me that you guys understand the how and the why. So please, if it's not clear, ask questions. We've got a question box, we've got a chat box, we got Karen on board to make sure we don't miss anything. We'll stay and make sure that you understand what's going on. And this seminar is definitely intended to be interactive, so don't let us just lecture you, because that's no fun for anybody. Now for the teacher. You guys are in for a treat. I interviewed Brad DeGraw on the podcast a couple weeks ago and was intrigued. Brad is a very successful Amazon seller. However, what intrigued me even more was his goal was not to be the biggest Amazon seller, make the most money. It was about quality of life. He wanted to have a successful business that would support him and his family, but also give him time to be with that family. And I thought that was amazingly, wonderfully insightful. This is a very important son. And there's a picture there about Brad and his son that you'll see later in the presentation. It's not on this slide, but I wanted to introduce you to Brad and let him take over from here. How you doing, Brad?
Doing great. Thanks, Kat.
Awesome. Okay, we're ready when you are, and there we go.
Excellent. Yeah, just to give some quick background, I started an FBA a year ago, not knowing anything about the business. And quickly I found that the business works. The thing is, it's not so much a shortage of inventory or opportunities. My main shortage was on time. And so I learned how to use VAs, virtual assistants, to buy back time at wholesale. As I started working in the business, I figured out what my time was worth and found that virtual assistants, especially overseas, you can buy time back at a discount. So throughout the webinar, if you have questions, go ahead and pop them in, but I'll go ahead and give you exactly how you could do this in your business.
I love that phrase, Brad. I'm sorry, I just love that. Buying time at wholesale, because that's what all entrepreneurs are looking for. We used to joke about a day stretcher or find me a couple extra hours. So VAs equal time at wholesale. Thanks, Brad.
Absolutely. And that's the thing is when you can buy back time, you have options now. You can either slow down and relax and enjoy time with family and goof off. Or if it's fourth quarter, you put the pedal to the metal and make more things happen. You're in control now. And so that's why I love virtual assistants. Another thing is there are stressful parts of the business. For example, customer feedback. There are things that just stress me out that I can actually put on someone else's plate and it gets handled. And the result may be the same. It's probably, X amount of refunds. But if I don't have to think about it or take up time in my day to do the things that I don't like to do, it's a much more enjoyable business. So jumping into virtual assistants, they're basically, let's jump into a true story real quick. Here's what I thought time management was. The first picture is me making phone calls. This used to be my normal job. I thought time management was eating a bunch of snacks at your desk and skipping lunch so you could do more work. That's not right at all. Time management is using someone else's time so that you can do the things you want, whether it's your bucket list. I was able to do Warrior Dash. The middle of the week, goof off, have fun with my son. We spend a lot of time. My son's school has so many days off. So we're always doing arts and crafts. We're traveling around. Recently, we took a few trips to Peru. One of the trips, there was a little mishap with the passports. And we ended up staying, instead of 2 days, we stayed an extra week. Unscheduled, unplanned. And I was able to do this because I have other people watching the business and taking care of it. So VAs totally open up your options to run the business as you see fit, to format your lifestyle. Virtual assistants, there's a lot of misconceptions. People use the word to mean any type of outsourcing. The reality, though, is virtual assistants do what you train them to do. This slide here on why, the 86,400, for me, that's a number I look at every single day. Those are how many seconds I have from the time I wake up one morning to the time I wake up the next day. There's only so many seconds in the day to do the business as well as to live the lifestyle you want. When you can buy back someone else's time, that 86,400 goes up. And so when you have that, you have the options. Virtual assistants are basically your stunt double. For me, a virtual assistant isn't just a level of outsourcing. It's hiring someone and training them to do the business that I want it to be done. I don't hire someone with a bunch of experience. I hire someone who's coachable, who's trainable. I teach them what I already know how to do. So basically, they're your stunt double, and once they're trained, they're working with little or no guidance, and that's huge. It really means your first week of working with a virtual assistant may not pay off because it's training intensive, but after that, it pays huge. Another thing about virtual assistants that was on my mind when I started down this path was, what about the language barriers? If you hire someone overseas, chances are they're not a native English speaker, and that's okay if you're willing to deal with second language issues. For me, it's not that big of a deal. My wife is Peruvian, so we deal with second language miscommunication all the time. So if that's not something you're comfortable with doing, you can actually hire virtual assistants here in the United States or Canada and still have the same benefits. There will be a cost difference, but there are some advantages to hiring someone closer to home. So that's another thing you have a choice in. Don't let the second language thing scare you away right off. But if you already know that you don't have the time or patience for it, then hire someone closer to home. Another thing is, where do you find the virtual assistants? Now that you know what they are, what they can do, you can find them. Because they're virtual assistants, you're not going to put a bulletin up in the local community bulletin board. Look on these sites. there are virtual assistants all over the internet, but these are some reputable sites. Onlinejobs.ph is the one I use to hire in the Philippines. Fiverr, most people have heard of Fiverr. You do get what you pay for. There's great things available on Fiverr, but there's just as many people who you need to make sure they understand exactly what you're doing, or you're not going to get what you want. Odesk is wonderful. They're another site that you can hire either full-time or by the job. VAnetworking.com is another new one. It's a VA networking site where VAs get together and communicate back and forth. Freelancer is a great site. The key to these sites are first knowing what you're looking for and then writing a good post to get that person. There are two types of VAs as far as time commitment. You either have someone who's dedicated to you or they're shared. What I mean by that is shared means they're working for several people at the same time on several different projects. A good bit of their time and focus and energy goes into looking for more work. When someone's working for several different bosses, it's possible when you hire them for your job, they're going to get behind on another job or miss deadlines or get overcommitted, and that's something that will affect your business as well. So be careful when you're hiring someone who's sharing their time with several different employers. I like to go dedicated because VAs are so affordable. I hire someone full time and I bought up their whole week of availability, and they work for me full time. My virtual assistant's name is Ivan. He's wonderful. He's a critical part of my business. And because he's only working for me, anytime he's online, I can chat with him. Anytime we need to switch direction, I know it's an option because I know his workload and he's dedicated for my business. And so for me, that works. But start slow, start where you're most comfortable with. But here are great resources to kind of jump in if you want to start doing some homework. Most of them, let's see, all of them, you will need to start an account. They're all free accounts except for onlinejobs.ph. There's a fee to get all access there, but there is a free version.
Yeah, I think it was $50 a month when I was looking at Online Jobs PH, wasn't it? Do you remember?
It's $50, and I can't remember if that's 1 month or 3 months.
Oh, maybe may have changed it. What I liked about Online Jobs PH is it is strictly focused on Filipino. There are other nationalities there, but it's mostly Filipino, and they had a lot of training documents. And it wasn't that you had to pay $50 a month for 12 months or a year or 2 years or whatever. It was more like you would pay $50 until you got the employee you wanted, felt like you'd got the training you needed, and then you could drop that and just work with the employee. Is that how you found it?
That's how I found it. It took maybe 10 days to find Ivan and know that he was the right one. So I'll kind of walk down that path here. So when you join these sites, you need to know what you're hiring them for. Virtual assistants take direction. They don't give guidance. And that's one of the things where you want to make sure that you know you're in charge giving direction. If you're going to ask them to improve your business or improve your listings without giving them specifics, you're going to be disappointed. So when I went into onlinejobs.ph, I knew that I wanted someone to run my eBay store. I just bought a few pallets of inventory, and I had no experience in eBay. When I received the inventory, it was clear that I couldn't put it on Amazon. It was eBay quality versus Amazon quality. I think everyone knows what I mean there. It's slightly box damage or open boxes, good merchandise, but not presentable for Amazon sellers. So I had to have someone quick because there's 2 pallets that had to move ASAP. The investment's already made. I need that capital back. So I hired Ivan to run my eBay store. I still don't know how to create a good eBay listing, but I was able to create the templates that he could then go and create hundreds of listings very quickly with the right pictures and the right descriptions. And we did it with an economy of scale. Because he already had some experience in eBay, he was able to do that for me. But generally speaking, everything you need them to do, you're already going to have the skill. So for me to find Ivan, I searched keywords such as online selling, eBay, Amazon, and you narrow it down. I wanted someone with proficient English, maybe not excellent, but good. Someone with a certain amount of experience, a certain amount of feedback. And I emailed probably half a dozen people that I thought were good candidates. And back and forth, we figured out who was going to be the best fit based on their emails. And I'll jump into the emails. Well,
okay. Well,
there's time to do that.
Yeah, there's a lot of questions in the chat room, mainly about hiring and all of that. I wanted to clarify one of the comments you made about hiring somebody dedicated. I love what you said because that's really very true, especially with a Filipino. I mean, it can cost you $50 for a week of work. It can cost you a little more than that, a little less than that, but I mean, that's 40 hours. So it's very inexpensive that way. However, you know, that's really, if you're talking about hiring somebody full-time, you're talking about an international VA, correct, Brad?
That's correct.
Right.
That's where my experience lies, is hiring international.
Yeah.
It works for me specifically because, like you said, the price points are low enough.
Mm-hmm.
I actually pay Ivan more than that, but that's not out of line. So like $50 a week is a reasonable
and
rate.
That's for a college-educated person. Now,
yes.
It may be a little different than college here in the U.S., but it's pretty comparable. Karen, you are going to answer some of the questions that were coming in, too, about the difference between an independent contractor and a VA. Right.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that people have to be careful of when, at least for U.S.-based. I'm not sure about international-based because they're not part of our Medicaid, Medicare, and all of those systems. But one of the things to remember, too, when Brad was talking about how you train them and what you teach them and stuff, when you start working with U.S.-based employees, the degree of direction you can give an independent contractor is much different than an employee. And the IRS can be very particular about that. I know when I work with people, basically it's, I need you to do this job. But if they start telling me the hours of the day I need to work on that job or specific things that I need to do that job,
it's a gray area.
Very specific, then it becomes a gray area because I become more of an employee. I mean, I had a person I worked with once who wanted, every hour of my day and what I did and how I did it. That makes me more an employee than an independent contractor.
Right.
And the IRS really watches that kind of stuff because if you hire an employee, you have the workers' comp issues, you have the paying into Medicare and Social Security and all of those other things.
And so that's another plus on the column of the international. And Karen and I and Brad were talking about this right before the webinar this morning. There's really so many different types of VAs, and we are going to try to do some series, some more webinars. This particular webinar and the one to follow it next week is going to be focused on an international VA. We will in the future try to work with people who have hired United States VAs. We're also talking about getting Cliff to come and make comments about how to be careful of that law between employee and independent contractor. Right now, we're going to focus with Brad on the international, but I'm glad that y'all brought those questions up so we could get that out there too.
Yeah, because the questions have been coming in about things like 1099s. I know for me personally, when I get paid, if somebody mails me a check, I will get a 1099 at the end of the year. If they pay me in PayPal, then it's covered under my PayPal 1099K.
Great.
That was one of the questions that came through. Do you want some of the other questions?
Let's go on because, like I said, I want to keep Brad going. I want to keep him focused. We are focusing. Like I said, we are aware of the larger issues, and I want to let you guys know that. We're not ignoring those. We will be doing other webinars in the future talking about hiring U.S. VAs and U.S.-based VAs and how that looks, and getting Cliff to come in and talk about how to be careful of that difference. But today and next week is really about the international VA. And there are cons and there are pros. And there's a lot of pros, so we're going to let Brad show you guys that. Okay, Brad? Do we take your thunder too much?
No, we're rocking and rolling.
Okay.
If you like, I'll go through the interview process and then the differences, the pluses and minuses of each kind.
Yes, please.
For the interview process, it's totally different than if you're hiring someone in the U.S. It's probably the opposite side of the spectrum. I do three emails minimum. It's not just someone that you feel good about a good email and then you're ready to go because the resume checks out. The first email I do, you're actually looking for 3 traits: communication, coachability, and the ability to solve problems. That matters more than their experience, which is kind of the opposite. If you're hiring someone here, you probably want someone with experience. My first email, I ask them about themselves and their relevant background. What employers have they worked with? What types of skills do they have? The second email, and this goes against most people's conventional thinking, I ask them about their family. I ask them about their favorite websites and their childhood education. It's a totally different culture there, and this is expected that you will be interested and compassionate towards those things. Those things are important for this culture, and it matters. If you leave that step off, you'll have problems retaining your virtual assistant. And you can ask them, what are you doing for the holidays? Things like that, where in the United States, that's taboo. You know, you can get yourself in some hot water there. And then the third email is a lot more casual. I ask them to actually use Amazon and eBay as a consumer. So I had him find personal shopping items and send me the links so that I knew he knew how to find a printer, so that he can understand these are the processes that a customer goes through, and it helps him understand why we do what we do. At the end of it, you want to make sure that they understand they're going to be trained, and you're going to do the training. They're going to know how to do their job, as well as you have to let them know they're expected to hit obstacles and ask you for help. The Philippines is a very humble culture, and they want to please. So it's not uncommon for them not to ask for help, not to admit they haven't succeeded yet. And so it's very important to let them know it's okay to ask for help. Now we can kind of jump into the differences between going here and going there. And it's all a matter of personal choice. You have to do what fits for your business. For me, it made sense to go to the Philippines. If you go for a US based or someone closer to home, they're going to have a reliable internet connection. That's a big plus. They're going to use the same currency, they're going to have the same language and the same type of logic and the same general work schedule. Those are nice for a lot of folks that need that. You need to hire someone maybe on this side of the world. The minuses for the US, we kind of touched on earlier. You're going to have to make sure you jump through the right loopholes. I shouldn't say loopholes. You're going to have to be compliant with taxes. You're going to have to be compliant with all of the nice things that the government says you have to do when you're bringing someone into your business, and making sure you're on the contractor side versus the employee side. And the thing is with this, and I'm not the expert, the rules keep changing. Right now it feels like we're playing tennis, but in a few years it's going to look more like ping pong. Mm-hmm. And so as the rules keep changing, you have to be compliant, even though they change without your permission. Switching into the Philippine-based, they're eager to please, they're coachable, they're affordable, and they work while you sleep. Ivan, after dinner I get online and chat with Ivan for a little bit, make sure he's lined out with his task. And by morning, he's done 50 things in my business that would have taken me half a day to do. And I already start the day with half a day of work done, or even a full day. So that's a plus on the Philippine side. A minus is the miscommunication. It happens with everybody, with every business, every marriage, every relationship. There's miscommunications. You have a higher potential for miscommunications when there's a slight language barrier. Mm-hmm. Another thing that people don't think about are blackouts. It happens. It's possible for them to be without power for several days straight. So if you have a business where tight deadlines matter and you can't have any flexibility on getting the work done, this is something that you really need to consider, maybe having a hybrid or having a backup assistant in the U.S.
Or having two.
Also there,
it would be unlikely.
yeah,
be unlikely for two different sections of the country to be down at the exact same time for the exact same amount of time, correct?
Exactly. I mean, they do have some pretty serious storms, but if you went one in the Philippines and one in Guam, for example, you'd probably be okay.
Cool.
Another big thing that most U.S. employers don't think about is the 13th month. We don't have that here. The closest thing we have is a Christmas bonus, and that oftentimes is not cash. In the Philippines and much of the rest of the world, it's customary for the employer to give the employee a 13th month of salary, basically a full month bonus at the end of the year. And the reason for that is it's a cash-based society. Everyone lives hand to mouth. And for them to be generous to their friends and loved ones, this 13th month is what they use. So if you don't give them the 13th month, it really, really hurts. So make sure you plan for that if you are hiring someone overseas. Jumping into, and I know we kind of have to wrap this up because we're running late on time. For eBay sellers, for Amazon sellers, we'll kind of jump into what they need, what they can get out of it. VAs can do a lot for eBay sellers. Like I said, if it wasn't for Ivan, I wouldn't have an eBay business. He basically runs the entire store through Octiva. Octiva is a service that works with eBay. eBay has some pretty good security, and it's almost impossible for someone overseas to log into a U.S. account. They have several layers of security. So Octiva was our way to work with that. He can log into our Octiva account and manage my eBay store. He can do listings, pictures, descriptions, pricing. He can configure the shipping rates. He can do everything that needs to be done online. He can't do the packing, the shipping, and I don't have him do customer service. Customer service sometimes is lost internationally. They don't think of customer service like we think of customer service. So it's best to keep that in your own hands or put it in the hands of someone who's closer to home. Switching up to the Amazon sellers. They can research and request for reimbursements on the inventory discrepancies. I believe that's one of the handouts you'll get at the end of the webinar. This is huge. I make between 5 and 10 times my investment when I have Ivan do my inventory discrepancies. What that means is Amazon and UPS, bless their hearts, they buy a lot of inventory, but they don't like to put those funds in your account until you ask. There are a lot of items that slip through the cracks. So I have him go and do the research, and it can be hundreds, if not, $1,000 per pay period sometimes, depending on how the month goes. This is huge amounts of money that I wouldn't normally take the time to find, but he does that for me. So inventory discrepancies are huge. Research additional sources for existing inventory. He can track your problem inventory if you find out that there's certain items that are causing you bad feedback consistently or high returns. He's keeping his eye on that. It's amazing. He can pull all the reports that you need. The inventory opportunities, that's basically a shopping list that Amazon puts for you. But if you don't take the time to pull it, you're not getting the right things in your store in the right timely manner. So he pulls all these reports for me. He monitors and tracks the competition. Sorry to say, but yeah, I do watch a lot of who's out there, and it helps the business. I know if someone's pushing the price down, they need to find a new way to be competitive on those products. And then the last thing is optimize listings, whether it's adding new pictures, new titles, tags. There are a lot of things you can do to get a listing to perform better for the search bot. So I've trained him how to do that, and it's wonderful. So that's a quick overview of what they can do for eBay sellers and Amazon sellers. should we go into some questions at this point, or?
Let's do questions, and then we'll do training real lightly because that's going to be heavy duty next week. But Karen, what questions do you have for us?
Well, one of the big questions, and you kind of touched on it, is any concerns about password and security issues?
Yes. And that's something we'll dive into specifically step by step next week. But I don't put him in charge of my money.
Mm-hmm.
My wallet stays in my pocket. I'm the only one who has access to that. So, for example, in Amazon's awesome at this. You can set up a second account, second access, that's limited access, and you set the parameters to what that second account can access. And I make it so my disbursements don't show up. I make it so that the financial data is not available, and he can't, change the accounts or anything like that. So yeah, that's one of the big fears is, what if they steal my identity and take all my money? There are safeguards against that. You have to make sure that those are in place. But yeah, there's a process, and we'll go through that next week.
Yeah, I know personally I love the fact with Amazon, because people that I work with can set me up a separate account, because on the other side of the coin, I don't want to know a lot about the money. I don't need to know. I don't want to know. And so that's what's nice. And I know that I really wish eBay had something like that.
Me too.
And I've been to many EOLs where I've had those coffee chats, and I've said, you have lots of people that are businesses, and they have lots of people in their accounts. There really should be levels of access.
Absolutely.
So that always makes it interesting.
Okay, did you have
Are there
more?
any other? Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Kat. I'm scrolling through.
Okay, Michelle's asking the same question about, eBay, and I thought that was genius because eBay doesn't have those levels of user permissions like Amazon does. So if you want someone to work in your Amazon account, you have to give them your name and password, and they can control everything. So I thought what you were saying, Brad, about using Octiva, then you can give him your Octiva password, and he can do your listings and stuff, but he can't actually get into the eBay account. That was brilliant. How did you come up with that?
Believe it or not, Ivan came up with that.
Interesting. He knew how to do that. Great.
Yes.
Yep. And I'm thinking some of the other services like Vendio and those kinds of things would do the same type of thing, because you were saying that, how having someone overseas log into your eBay account would be a red flag. And I know we've run into that just in the US where, like we've tried to have a class and look into other people's accounts. Sometimes eBay will let you in, sometimes it won't. It comes up and it wants this code.
I ran into it this week, and I was working on somebody's editing their listings, and I got you need to enter your PIN because you're using a computer we don't recognize.
Right.
So I have to email the person I'm working for, and they have to get the PIN and
get a phone call. Yeah, eBay really needs to change that. But for now, I thought that was brilliant to use that as a workaround to set up an Octiva account or a Vendio account or some other third-party service where they can log into that service and manage your eBay listings and your eBay store from there. Some of the things they couldn't do, like they couldn't get into your newsletters and stuff, but they could do the listings, and that's critical. Interesting. We had some other questions, but Karen, did you find those?
Yeah, well, I'm going through them, and a lot of them were about the 1099s and things like that, the 1099 case. Yeah. And do you have to issue 1099s to Filipino or out of the country?
No, not unless they're U.S. citizens that are working in the Philippines. No, they don't have any tax compliance issues with the U.S.
Okay. Good question from Charlene. How many hours do you estimate that you train a VA before they're up and running? I think this is really a good general question, and I think it's one of those it depends. But if you could set some expectations. If you hire someone from the Philippines, a lot of it, of course, will depend on what you're hiring them to do and how much experience they have. But generally speaking, should you expect maybe that first week to be all training, or the first 3 days, or just a general idea?
Here's how I do it. I train in layers. So, for example, there are 3 different ways to track discrepancies in my Amazon inventory. There are 3 different processes to have a complete search. So I'll train him on one layer, one type of search, one activity. And that will take less than an hour. and I'll just stick him on that, work on that for a few days so that he has instant success, quick success. And we know quickly how well we work with each other. After he's completely finished with that task, I'll add another layer of training and figure, depends on how complicated that layer of training is. It can be less than an hour up to 2 hours if I have to share screens or create documents.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the time I just create a document and I create the screen share. I'll capture different parts of the screen and write out a 1, 2, maybe 3-page document. He goes through that, asks questions. So typically it's no more than 2 hours, but generally less than 1 hour per task.
Okay, that's awesome. And I have to say that Brad, when he was on the podcast, gave out 3 of his training documents, and I've got one for y'all today. And I sent those to my daughter. Now, obviously, she's a very intelligent woman because she's my daughter, and she's U.S. But she took those 3 documents and was able to bring in about $450 this week in inventory that I just did not have time to track. And that was nothing except me handing her the documents saying, "Can you do this for me, please?" So, once you've got the document written out, especially if you follow Brad's method and the way he writes the documents, it seems to be very self-explanatory.
Yeah, and Kat, I'm sure that if someone was paying an outsourced employee $100 to $200 a week, let's say overseas, to get a $400 return is wonderful.
Yep.
I mean, those are the things that the business is built on, is significant ROI.
Absolutely.
And that's why VAs work for me.
Absolutely. Did you find any other questions, Karen?
Yeah, I didn't. I lost it. Well, one of the things that somebody pointed out, Shar pointed out, is they have to remember that Guam is actually U.S. territory, so you have to be careful with the tax reporting things there.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and Cindy Hamilton is saying that she really appreciates your insights about the cultural difference. It's very important. From Wes Johnson, do you use...
that's the one I was just going to ask.
Oh, go ahead.
Do you use your virtual assistant to research the right product descriptions for new bundles with the keyword rich content?
Yeah, I wouldn't call it keyword rich content. Amazon gives you a list of popular tags. Next to the rank, you'll find tags. Generally speaking, not every listing, because they do a lot of A/B testing. But you can find the most popular tags on Amazon. And so, those Amazon search bots are using those. They're finding those. So I'll use those as much as possible in the description, in the title, throughout the listing, if possible.
Great. Okay, let's give them a capsule view of training. How do you train your VAs, Brad?
I do most everything with Google Docs. Google is my best friend on working with someone overseas. It may sound difficult to believe, but I've never spoken to Ivan. We've never talked on the phone or Skype or anything of that nature. We've done everything by either chat or a Google training document. So I'll create a document, just a Word doc, and clip out sections of the screen and enter in everything I want him to do, what's important on each screen, so that he can walk through it on his side. And he's doing it, walking through the document the same way I have. And I'll ask him, do you have questions? Is this working? Is this not working? And as we go, I'll update the document so that it's clearer for him to work next time. And that's it. We just prioritize what's important right now, what's important when he gets finished, and what's important if he finishes that. After someone's trained, it'll impress you with how quickly they can get through the workload.
I agree. I have found with my the gentleman that I was working with and the young lady that it was almost a challenge giving them enough to do, because it was like, let's find something else. Yeah.
That's my biggest headache with Ivan, is he's awesome.
Yeah.
And it takes time to figure out the next thing and create the training documents to teach him the next skill. But yeah.
Yep. Okay, great. Karen, do you have any questions?
There is one final question that came in. Is there any type of training manual or videos that have been created to help train an FBA VA? more importantly, looking for help with running reports, creating inventory, managing the more tedious things?
I haven't found any. That's why I've created the documents. If there are any, if anyone in the chat room knows of any, please post it, because I'd love to use it and save myself some time.
Well, and we are, like I said, we have, we're going to give you one today so you can kind of get an idea of how Brad does these documents and decide if it's something, that you want to do. But next week's webinar, we're going to be sending you home with a short little ebook, probably 10 pages or so. And those pages will all be documents and things that Brad has developed for training. So that'll come with the class next week. And Sandy Sauls Johnson in the chat room, she's got some documents she's talking about, so we may talk to her later too about eBay. But I love, like I said, the documents that you gave out at the podcast, I was thrilled with, because, like I said, they made me $450. Thank you, Brad. I owe you dinner.
Excellent.
But we'll have more of that for you next week. We'll give you one today and then more next week. So anything else? Did we miss any questions?
Not that I can see.
Yep. Harry, email me. Email cat@thatcat.com, and we'll talk about your question that I saw there. Okay, let's talk about more. Free resources. Obviously, you can learn a lot more about. If you just go out to Google and type in virtual assistant, you're going to be a little inundated. But there's a lot of information out there. It's a very hot topic. I love Brad's phrase of buying time at wholesale, because that's really what it is. When you realize that you're the business owner and you should be working, the business should be working for you, that kind of thing. You don't want to be spending your time doing, as Jim Cochran puts it, $7 an hour jobs. Free resources, That Cat Radio. We did an interview with Brad 2 weeks ago, interview with Andy Dew about another kind of outsourcing last week, and all of that. Join us on the Facebook group, That Cat, and ask any questions. We'll get Brad over there to fill you out. And there's lots of other podcasts. There's eBay Radio, hasn't really touched on this subject. I know Ask Janelle Radio has talked about virtual assistants. Fiverr, all these places are free to sign up for an account. It's really interesting just to go to Odesk and Elance and look at the things people are offering to do. It kind of gives you an idea. If you're not sure what you want to hire a VA, you know that you're at your limit. You've done all you can for your business. You can't really grow much further until you can find some more time, but you're not really sure about specific tasks. Looking around at Fiverr, Odesk, and Elance can give you some good ideas. We're going to send you home with the training document for Amazon inventory control. I have a list from the GoToWebinar with all of your email addresses, and I'll be sending that out by midnight tonight. And also, Brad sent us a list, and Karen has us a list of what can you use a VA to do for you on Amazon. What can you use for a VA to do for you on eBay? So lots and lots of different ideas. So those are the two pieces for the class today. Here's your summary of the class today and the next steps I suggest for you. Take the suggested task list that Brad and Karen have put together and use it whatever way is best for you. You can open it in Evernote. You can put it in Google Documents. You can print it out, whatever works. Find 1 to 3 tasks on that list that you think, hey, that is something that I could do. Focus on those. Look through that list. Maybe there's something else not on the list that you've thought of yourself, but look through the list, brainstorm, get yourself 1 to 3 things you think, I could outsource those tasks. I could do that and grow my business. Bring your homework. This is your homework. Bring this to your next webinar next week with your questions, and we'll do our best to answer them. Let's see. Would you spend $39 to grow your business to the next level? I think you are. The webinar today was to give you actionable info, but also to see if you're ready for more training. If this is a subject that you thought, I'm really interested in this, this could help me take my business to the next level, I invite you to spend $39 for a 2-hour webinar with Brad, Karen, and Kat on specific training styles and methods. We're going to talk about how Brad did those documents. How did he put those together? How do you know what to do them? We're going to talk about tools such as using Jing to get your screenshots, using Screencast to take short little videos for free that you can send to your VA. We're going to talk about using Join Me to share screens. We're going to talk about lots of tools, most of them free. You'll have an action plan. You will have an action plan to grow your business at the end of these 2 hours, and you will take home Brad's ebook on training your international VA. You can sign up now and all the way until next Wednesday. Please share the link. We'd love to have you and your friends. Thatcat.com/VA webinar.